It's January and it is crispy cold. It was 30 degrees this morning. Can you believe that? This is Florida. That's not supposed to happen. Well, my clients still want to catch big trout. And I've got my top 5 big trout baits inside. I've got it all set up in the studio and I'm going to share those with you right now. Let's go. All right, well, let's just dive right in. When I think about targeting speckled trout this time of year, cold, crispy mornings, working through the day, I'm not talking about going and fishing a deep hole just to catch a bunch of 15, 16, 17-inch trout. I want to catch big trout. And a lot of those zones require me to fish over rock, over oyster, over shallow grass. When we get that barometer just right and we get that warm up and we know the fish are going to get a little bit aggressive, it's hard for me not to reach for this plug. This is a Madine XL. This is the 27 MR, but you'll notice that I have upgraded the hooks. I hate to say upgraded because it's really not an upgrade. What I did is I lightened them up. Now I spent a little bit of money on these hooks. These are what you call EWG hooks. So if you look closer, you'll see how they angle back in toward the hook eye. Once the fish grabs a hold of it, he's got it. Now I mashed the barbs down on all of these, but this bait is about 3 1/8 inch long, weighs 9/16. Generally speaking, with stock hooks, you'd be working this in 1 to 2 foot of water, but you'd have to work it a little bit faster. I like to work it slow this time of year. I want to have that really easy pace, kind of match the action of the bait fish in the water. So by lightening these hooks up, it all but floats. It literally, you have to dive it down and it'll just suspend. It might be a little bit negative on some days, and other days it might just rise up a little bit. It just depends on the plug itself. But these type of opaque colors, this happens to be key lime, it's a custom color, but they're fantastic for teasing those big gator trout into doing something that they don't want to do, and that's eat my lure. All right, let's move on. Okay, next up is if I'm that angler who wants to fish potholes in the flats or throw it up in the tide and let the bait kind of just swim down naturally, me really not imparting any action on the rod at all, just having the tail just kind of swim along. There's nothing better than what Z-Man dropped last iCast, which is the 4-inch Ballers. All right, the 4-inch Ballers has its own built-in action. The ball tail, when it has a little bit of resistance on it in tide or wind, will swing back and forth. It'll just kind of paddle back and forth. And because a Aztec is so soft and buoyant, with a this is a mustad grip pin here. This is a 3/0 grip pin, and it weighs maybe 1/8 of an ounce. I can throw this up in tide and just kind of kick it along and just kind of stay on a semi-slack line and let this kind of ride over those salt and pepper holes, or maybe by the point of an oyster bar or rock bar, and it does a really good job. It's turned into a confidence bait of mine, and it's tough as nails, so it survives a bunch of marauding little toothy fish, or maybe a couple of ladyfish that might drive you crazy, because it swims even when you don't want it to. All right, let me get this one for you next. Okay, the next one for me, I have to have a Paul Brown. If I'm targeting big trout, I have to be throwing a Paul Brown Corky. This is the fat boy version. It's a little deeper in the body. You're talking about a 3 1/2 inch bait really overall, but it weighs 7/8 of an ounce. So I mean, you can really drive this bait through the wind on those pre-front days where the fish are really getting kind of chewy. I fish this a lot in about 1.5 foot to about 3 feet of water. The red gill denotes that it's a floater, so it's a little bit lighter than the standard Fat Boy. It's got a rattle inside of it. This is the Plum Nasty color, which is just a fantastic color. You'll see a lot of pros that will bend the nose down on these baits to get them to dive a little bit better, and they'll bend the tail down. And what that does is it makes this bait dig in the water. Now, I do like to use this lure when I've got a little bit of a falling barometer and the bait fish in the water are a little bit more active. That's when I'm probably going to use this the majority of the time. I would take that 27, that modified 27 MR, that Madine XL, and use it on the colder days. All right, let's see what we've got next. Well, believe it or not, top water. That's right. You don't associate winter fishing with using top waters. But here on my coast, top waters can be a big play in the wintertime. It's those days after the front goes by and you get it where the barometer kind of levels off, and you get the first day where it gets, that water temperature jumps 1-2 degrees, a little bit warmer, and you're fishing the afternoon and you got a pretty day. You throw a Mirr Mullet XL. This is the MR26. It's 3.5 inches long, weighs about a half an ounce, so you can get some really long casts. This is a more subtle topwater mullet look-alike from Mirrolure. Does a good job when I'm working it down a marsh grass line. And when you work these in the winter months, you're just like click, clack, click, clack. And then maybe stop it and click, clack. You get my meaning? It's got to be slow, very slow. But if you work it like that, you'll get a follow. And it's just not the trout that will slurp this. You will get a curious redfish that will whack it as well. So it's one of those combo baits that you can throw. It usually takes more of an alpha fish to want to eat this. So to me, it's always in my tackle bag. But this one really just kind of culminated out of a conversation that was on the platform that I have at my online fishing school, FlatsClassUniversity.com. A good buddy, Mike Connolly, have been using these core tackle, check that out, core tackle rigging system. And here's the actual jig itself. You can see, I'm going to hold it in a corner there. See what it looks like? Well, here's the look it gives a 5-inch Z-Man trout tricks, and the action is unbelievable. The trout trick never swam better. So that's the look. It's like a headless jig, okay? And because the weight is distributed through the first, I'm gonna say inch or so of this bait, it makes it swim so much different. So on a semi-slack line, or I'm darting it through a pothole and then letting it fall, has a totally different action than it would if it were on a jig head. In fact, I cannot wait to try it out when we get to the warmer months and I can throw it for snook, because I think it's just going to drive them nuts. And I'm thinking I could probably even stick it further back in the bait and have the hook eye come out further back in. It's a really new rigging technique for me. It's something I know some of the bass guys have been doing it for a while now, but I'm impressed. And if you can't find these at a local retailer, or you're struggling to find them, I called SodiumUSA.com, that is up the street from me, and I asked Seabass if he'd bring them in. So he's going to bring them in. So if you want them, go to SodiumUSA.com and get some. But this made my top 5 winter baits for trout for 2025, because I got a feeling this is going to be one of those baits that can change things. They'll give you an advantage. I've rigged it on the Mulletron, on the 3.3 Mulletron and the 4.0 diesel minnows, and it has a cool look to it, and it's a clean swim. But when I put it on this stick bait, it did something special. And I'm going to try it on a couple of more things now, because I'm pretty hooked on these things. They make them in a variety of hook sizes. This happens to be a finesse style. So it's something a little bit new. Hey, if you enjoy what you're seeing here at FlatsClass, television, FlatsClass YouTube, please give us that thumbs up and subscribe. I want you here in my virtual classroom each and every day. See you guys tomorrow.